Joined now by Joe Mullinax. He's the co-host of Locked On Grizzlies podcast, as well as the editor for Bluff City Media. Joe, thank you so much for popping on, man. Let's do our Memphis Grizzlies check-in here. Not a great check-in to start. 30th in offense and a 1-7 record. What is the story right now kind of behind why the offense has been so slow?
It's almost like when you're down numerous good players, you're going to be bad, right? Like whether it's Ja Morant as a top 15 or so player in the NBA, whether it's Steven Adams as one of the more underrated bigs in terms of being elite at being really big. I think we talked about him on our last time that we chatted. He's not there, right? He's out for the season. That was a misstep by this front office. And for me, people like to point fingers of blame in Memphis right now, understandably so. My biggest finger of blame is at the front office. Like, I find it hard to believe that they didn't know that the Steven Adams situation wasn't a possibility. They put way too much faith in the likes of Zaire Williams, who's playing just abysmal basketball, especially offensively. Way too much faith in young players like Jake LaRavia, who got a demotion recently to the Memphis Hustle. It was brief, but still, a former first-round pick that you made a trade to go acquire. Second year in the league, you're supposed to be a championship contending team, and he gets demoted when you have so many players out due to varieties of ailments and suspensions. That's just not a good look. So I'm concerned on a variety of levels that the Grizzlies don't have the depth to get through this Ja Morant period in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, shooting a lot of threes right now, trying to kind of make up for the absence of Ja Morant, but not a lot of them are going in. I think only one guy, John Conchar, is really shooting a reasonable percentage right now. And everybody else is kind of in that low 20s to low or like high 20s, low 30s area. There's just not a lot of pressure that they're able to really put on opposing teams right now. Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson are sort of the two guys that you would naturally turn to in that situation. How do you think they've handled that added stress on their offense?
Well and not well. They've handled it well in terms of there's not much more you can ask of them, right? Both have, especially Bane, career highs in usage. Bane is still scoring really well despite that increase in usage. The Miami Heat game recently not included in that. He's playing at an all-star caliber level. Jaren Jackson Jr. doing things well on both ends of the floor, 28 points against the Miami Heat. A lot of those points were scored on Bam Adebayo, who has kind of taken on Jaren as a de facto rival because of all the attention Jaren has gotten of late, especially for his defense. Jaren's played well and Bane has played well. The problem is they don't have anybody beyond them. Marcus Smart has struggled. He's done some good things. He shot the ball well at times, but he's also not a true point guard. We knew that going in, and that continues to manifest itself in terms of the decision he makes with the ball in his hands more often than not. We mentioned Zaire Williams struggling. Xavier Tillman doesn't have the offensive acumen scoring the basketball. Luke Kennard missed some time. Santi Aldama missed some time. Now that those guys are back, you're starting to see some flashes of offensive relevancy and efficacy, but it really has to, settle in and develop and find its footing before you can really count on it. And they really just haven't had a chance to do that because of all the guys that have been out in and out of the rotation.
It's obviously tough when you never, I know that they probably had some inkling that Steven Adams may not be able to play, that there were some layers there, but there was also a lot of talk about him being able to kind of stabilize things after getting injured and then missing the playoffs last year. There's like Xavier Tillman's been okay. The shooting splits for him are not great, but the defense, I was really impressed when he faced against Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. Which other young players need to step up? Because if Desmond Bane's doing well and Jaren Jackson's doing well, you got to get somebody to go with them. Who's the guy that you're looking to right now?
Any young player that's a wing, right? Whether it's, David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams. I'm not going to count John Conchar on that list because he's 27 years old. He's not a young wing. But they need one of those guys, 3 first-round picks, right? In the case of Zaire Williams 2 years ago, a lottery selection of the Memphis Grizzlies after the Steven Adams, Jonas Valanciunas trade. They need someone to play and play well because I think, and going back to this being kind of the fault of the front office of Memphis, until they traded for Marcus Smart, they have not done anything that makes them look like a team that is trying to contend. Now, Marcus Smart is here. That tells me that the window is open in their eyes for contention. And that's still on the table, right? Like, you can start poorly, make a run, make the playoffs, have a chance. The Grizzlies aren't out of it by any stretch of the imagination. And then, of course, once Ja Morant comes back, assuming he returns at or near the level that we're accustomed to seeing him play, all bets are off. I wonder if you gave Zach Kleiman truth serum, the GM of the Grizzlies, would he not have regretted picking up and moving on from those guys before their trade value hit an all-time low? Like, it doesn't make sense to trade any of them now. You might as well just hope that they get better. They're young players still. You don't want to give up on any of them, but at the same time, they're trying to walk this fine line, this tightrope of being a young team, which they still technically are, and being a title contender. That's extremely difficult to do, and I think that we're seeing the realities of missteps on that high wire act when you're not in a position to be able to respond. These young guys have not been able to pick up this Grizzlies team when they've needed it as of late.
There's no doubt, and it sort of feels like this is trending in a really horrible direction, at least for this season. I still believe in the Grizzlies' long-term future. I still believe in their ability, and as you and I have talked about, Ja, Jaren, Desmond Bane, those guys are going to be around, and they have the resources in order to make this a good thing long-term. And you and I talked about on our previous episode, it is still about exercising patience because of how quickly they kind of jump the line, if you will, in the Western Conference in the standings in a lot of ways. It's like they've still got plenty of time and plenty of runway. On a scale of 1 to 10, though, like, what's the concern level for this particular season slipping away before it gets off the ground?
I'm at a 4. I'm at a 4. I think that's closer than I was a week or so ago. I anticipated them. If you remember correctly, I kind of voiced concerns about them starting slow, right? Because they didn't have Tyus Jones, the league's best substitute teacher. Marcus Smart is not as good at playing point guard as Tyus Jones is. That's just reality. Marcus Smart is a better basketball player. He's a better secondary facilitator, better player off the ball. When he is the guy that you're expecting to lead your offense, the results that we're currently experiencing are to be expected, at least in my opinion, especially when you don't have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of picking up the pieces. That talent just doesn't exist in Memphis. So I'm at a 4. I think that I'll be at a 5 or 6 if 2 weeks from now they're 3-14 or something along those lines, something that feels insurmountable in terms of a comeback. And that would still be with 8 or so games left in the Morant suspension. And the schedule is about to get tougher, right? They have Utah on Friday, but after that, they go out west. They have to play the Lakers. They have to play the Clippers. There's going to be games coming up that are not going to be easy for them. And they have to figure this out as quickly as possible. They need to get better production from these guys. And they need to get guys, it makes me sad to say this out loud, but they need guys like John Conchar back. Because while John Conchar may not have the ceiling of a Williams or Roddy or LaRavia, what he does have is the ability to be a steady presence. You know what you're going to get from Conchar. You're going to get solid team defense. You're going to get someone who's not going to make too many mistakes. That floor is something that could help stabilize that Grizzlies second unit and maybe get a few more possessions and buckets out of just by him simply being a constant net neutral-ish guy as opposed to so hit and miss like these young players have been.
You mentioned the Ja suspension that lifts on game 26 of the season on December 23rd. That's still 6 weeks away. It's still just a long ways off for a team where you're still going to play now 17 games. We're recording this on November 9th. So it's going to be a little bit. And I'm curious to see how they handle it. I'm curious to see which guys are able to step up. But we'll find out together. It's going to be very fascinating. Really quick before I get you out of here, I want to know the best player and the best team that you have personally seen so far play against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Ironically, it's the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. The game that the Grizzlies played the best in isn't the game that they won. But, whether it's Xavier Tillman limiting Jokic the way that he did, even in limiting Jokic, what did he have? 21 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, something like that. Like a bad night for this dude is basically a triple-double at this point. I know Jamal Murray is out for the foreseeable future next few weeks. To me, the Denver Nuggets are the NBA champion, and they are the likeliest repeat champion in a long time until proven otherwise. The Western Conference is a gauntlet. Obviously, you have Philadelphia playing really well. Boston's top 5 or 6 guys look as formidable as anybody in the league. But the Nuggets and Jokic, they're just on a different plane, and it's just really fun to watch him and them play. And that particular game is what still gives me hope for these Grizzlies. I do believe Denver's the best team in the league, and I do believe that Jokic is the best player, and Memphis was able to hang with them. They just have to be able to find ways to stop shooting themselves in the foot and put themselves in positions to let the opponent's mistakes help ease them into victories, they can still do that. There's still time. But for me, it's Denver and it's Jokic. They're just especially Jokic. He's just on a different planet in terms of what he's capable of doing with a basketball in his hands than everybody else right now.
Really fun to watch him, really fun to cover him on my end. It's been just a tremendous experience to be able to experience this for the first time, like having a player like this that you get to cover. So been a lot of fun. We will cover it more in future episodes, but he is Joe Mullinax, co-host of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, editor of Bluff City Media. Thank you so much for stopping by, Joe. We'll chat in 6 weeks. All right.
Looking forward to it. Hopefully we're talking about a Grizzlies team with a little more winning formula under their belt with John Morant returning next time we chat.